much, and so we now look at our programs and anticipate with excitement what Professor Melba Joyce Boyd will tell us. In the third and final talk of the first post-lunch session of the seminar, or the symposium today. So, Professor Melba Joyce Boyd is Distinguished Professor and Chair of Africana Studies at Wayne State. She is the author of 13 books, breathtakingly, including Wrestling with the Muse, Dudley Randall, and the Broadside Press, which received the 2005 Black Caucus of the American Library Association Book Honor for Nonfiction. 8 of her books are collections of poetry, the most recent of which is Death Dance of a Butterfly, published in 2010. She's won a number of awards for her poetry, including a Michigan Council for the Arts Individual Artist Award. And in 2009, she was a nominee for the Kresge Eminent Artist Award. So once again, to something we were looking at earlier in the day. She lectures at universities and conferences throughout the United States and abroad, is the author of over 50 published essays on African American literature and film. We are delighted to welcome Professor Boyd today in her talk, which will take us from the image to the word, the Poetics of Destruction. So thank you so much.
I was just saying that Renee's last comment was an excellent segue into what I'm going to do today, and that is talk about the poetics of destruction. And I'm going to be pulling from poetry by Detroit writers, and also talking a little bit about myself being a Detroiter who has come and gone at different points in the city's history. And also, as a black person, my view of what goes on also has a very particular historical perspective, and I want to illuminate that in this presentation. When I asked my mother why did she and my father come to Detroit, she said, to get the hell out of Alabama. Now that might be the short explanation, but at the same time it reveals the emotional urgency to leave the pre-civil rights South by 2 educated blacks. My father gave me a more historical explanation. I had a degree in mechanical engineering and thought I might be able to secure a career in the automotive industry. But to his dismay, he was told, you are qualified, but the policy of the Ford Motor Company is to only employ colored people in the foundry. My father's hope was spurred by the financial support Tuskegee University received from Old Man Ford in exchange for the product research development George Washington Carver provided for the company. Unbeknownst to my daddy, Ford's liberalism only went as far as it serviced his needs. Professor Carver, one of America's foremost geniuses of any time, had his own research laboratory in Dearborn, Michigan, and ate lunch with Henry Ford in his mansion nearby. Or so the story goes, as told by the guided tour of the Greenville Village Museum. So my parents ended up in Detroit, where I was born on April 2nd, 1950, in a hospital that admitted black patients but didn't allow black physicians to practice. And my father's talents as an engineer were never actualized except as a supervisor of clerks working for the U.S. Postal Service, a place where equal opportunity had been made possible by President Harry Truman's executive order. My father was a veteran of the war against fascism, but the democracy he fought for was still lacking. The contradiction in Detroit history is as precarious as my father's failed aspirations in 1950. However, the twists and turns that ultimately led to the empowerment of African Americans in the 1970s culminated as the consequence of triumphs in the labor struggle, a war with the Detroit Police Department, and the election of Coleman Alexander Young in 1973 as the first black mayor of the city. This accounting is not one the media or many suburbanites considered when they accused blacks of destroying the city in the 1967 race rebellion, and then electing a black man they believed despised them. So I'm going to start with the first poem, which is Roses and Revolutions by Dudley Randall. Now, the poem was initially written in 1948 when Dudley Randall was a student at Wayne State University, by the way. But the images in the poem is generally considered to be prophetic because it became a poem that was widely anthologized during the 1960s because of the occasion of so many race riots in the United States.
Musing on roses and revolutions, I saw night close down on the earth like a great dark wind. And the lighted cities were like tapers in the night. And I heard the lamentations of 1,000,000 hearts, regretting life and crying for the grave. And I saw the Negro lying in the swamp with his face blown off, and in northern cities with his manhood maligned, and felt the writhing of his viscera like that of the hare hunted down, or the bear at bay. And I saw men working, and taking no joy in their work, and embracing the hard I abhor with joyless excitement, and lying with wives and virgins in impotence. And as I groped in darkness, and felt the pain of millions, gradually, like day driving night across the continent, I saw dawn upon them like the sun, a vision of a time when all men walk proudly through the earth, and the bombs and missiles lie at the bottom of the ocean, like the bones of dinosaurs, buried under the shale of years. And men strive with each other, not for power, or the accumulation of paper, but in joy create for others the house, the poem, the game of athletic beauty. Then washed in the brightness of this vision, I saw how in its radiance would grow and be nourished, and suddenly burst into terrible and splendid bloom, the blood-red flower of revolution.
Black communities have been under attack in Detroit since 1863.
Musing on roses and revolutions.
And when I-75 was designated, was designed, the highway destroyed one of the historical neighborhoods of Black Detroit, and of Black Bottom and Paradise Valley. From Elegies for Paradise Valley by Robert Hayden, I'd like to read a short part of that poem. And Belle, the classy dresser, where is she who changed her frocks 3 times a day? Where is Nora with her laugh, her comic flair? Stage-struck Nora waiting for her chance. Where's fast Iola, who so loved to dance? She left her sick bed one last time to whirl in silver at the palace till she fell. Where's mad Miss Alice, who ate from garbage cans? Where's snuff-dipping Lucy, who played us tunes on her guitar? Where's Hattie? Where's Melissa Bell? Let vanished rooms, let dead streets tell. Where's Jim, Watusi Prince, and good old boy, who with a joke went off to fight in France? Who's Trump, the defeated artist, whose meals or booze, daubing with quarrelsome reds, descolate blues? Where's Les the huntsman, tough kid chocolate, where is he? Where's Dapper Jess? Where's Stomp the shell shot, clowning for us in parodies of war? Where's Taunted Christopher, sad queen of night, and Ray, who cursing crossed the color line? Where's gentle brother Davis? Where's dope fiend Mel? Let vanished rooms, let dead streets tell. The destruction of Black Bottom and Paradise Valley was a precursor to what happened in the '67 riot. What happens with communities of color in particular is that they're generally ignored when urban renewal or big plans are made. They're the people who are most likely going to be displaced. They're going to be the people who are going to be less likely to be served. So when you move people around and you disable a community like they did with the building of I-75, you create these kinds of problems and you plant seeds of possible disruption. Also, what happens when you begin to sort of, I don't know, sort of this thing that Americans have about tearing stuff down. The reason a place like Detroit is starting, I think, especially for Europeans, is that in Europe, there's not any more space. So they have to take care of what's already there. So there's restoration as a part of a reality of life. Americans throw stuff away. We throw buildings away, we throw people away, or we hide them. And I think that's a large part of what we're looking at, what's happening in Detroit. So if you can't see it, you don't have to worry about it. In September 2009, I was interviewed by a radio journalist for the BBC about Detroit's dismal economic situation. Despite his protestations, I tried to explain to him that the migration of whites to the suburbs began in the late 1940s and 50s, and as it did elsewhere in the U.S., and that the mass exit to the suburbs did not occur until after the election of Coleman A. Young, when whites no longer held political control and police repression. For a more nuanced discussion, you should see Heather Thompson's book, Who's Detroit? Contrary to common belief, even current myths about the demise of Detroit, the white flight that occurred after the riot was not that dramatic. The white majority maintained this position, and there were still predominantly white neighborhoods and a school district still divided by race because of these dynamics. At the same time, blacks resided in middle-class neighborhoods throughout the city, unlike ghettos in other large cities like New York or Chicago, where tenement housing characterized black residencies. Despite difficulty, for the most part, black Detroiters lived in brick houses with two-car garages graced with green lawns and colorful flower gardens. Detroit was a place that black people wanted to come to. It was a place that you could actually get a job that paid more than almost anywhere in the country. Of course, that is, I'm being nostalgic now, but that was the reality and the reason that ultimately it becomes a predominantly black city. But also remember that when white people are moving to the suburbs and the situation becomes extremely difficult, not because of the riot, but subsequently because of economic despair, the influx of drugs into the community, things that are not safe, the destruction of the public education system, black middle-class people also leave the city. And that has more to do, I think, in terms of destabilizing what we're looking at today than just simply white flight. We're talking about middle-class flight. Erosion of the tax base. As we all know, what's going on right now? The city is in serious shape. You're talking about an emergency financial manager, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what happens when money leaves. I'm going to read a couple of my poems which have to do with looking at the transformation of the city. And now the sort of attraction or the advertisement to get people to come back to Detroit, live Midtown. And I don't have that clip of Live Midtown, but I want you to go to your Wayne State site, and I want you to click that on, because what's disturbing about that advertisement to attract people to move back into the city is that there's not a single indigenous African American speaking on that advertisement. It is an appeal to white middle class people to move back to the city. This poem is called The View of Blue. The river was what they wanted. They valued the view of blue. A picture in a window with white lines drawn by many Venetian lines. The corporate state measured and maneuvered the real estate. They purchased collusion on the eve of elections in private rooms where lawyers convened with judges, the lords of the discourse of dismemberment. They protected the power of wealth and the right of Americans to shop for that dream house by the river with the trail of tears running through it. The undercurrents of city corridors dislodged and disassembled by the law of preeminent domain, the land was remanded with an eviction notice. The river was what they wanted. They didn't care how they got it, or that under the cover of dusk, rats run the course of the riverbanks and through hidden alleys to scour plastic garbage bags left outside entrances to servants' quarters. The burial of a building on the occasion of the implosion of the J.L. Hudson's department store in downtown Detroit on October 24, 1998. When they bring a building down, when they make history absent, when they implode a cistern of memories into a basement grave, where do the ghosts go? Are they given an eviction notice? Do they read the headlines of runaway newspapers tumbling down the street? Or do they pass on a posting caught on a jagged nail or transfixed on crumbling concrete? Did the ghost of the light-skinned colored girl who ran elevator number 5 call a meeting between floors to discuss the demise? Or did the last of the charm-posed mannequins hiding in the bridal suite of dressing rooms send out the fatal alarm? Perhaps one of the underemployed excavating the remains for bronze fixtures and copper veins left an echo in the alley so disturbing it alerted returning souls, disrupted their eternal shopping for imported after-dinner mints, for that exquisite dress with the perfect fit, for that pinstripe suit for the anniversary occasion, or for another matching set of muffs and hats for Christmas past celebrations. Did the ghosts follow our footprints to sit atop our houses, or did they hover next to high-rise towers and likewise point translucent fingers and clink champagne glasses filled with misty laughter? Or did the blast call their skeletons to attention, disrupt such earthbound musings, and with the wind scatter them with dust, ashes, and disoriented pigeons? Another landmark gone, another space left behind, another hole in a story, another burial to collect bones, another place from where ghosts are gone. I think I might be out of time.
No, you still have this. No.
Okay. I want to show the 2 clips. I think we can squeeze them in. There was mention made about the Chrysler commercial with Eminem. And I like to show that so that people can ask questions about it. And also there is a video by the rapper Black Milk called Losing Out.
I got a question for you. What does this city know about luxury? Huh? What does a town that's been to hell and back know about the finer things in life? Well, I'll tell you, more than most. You see, it's the hottest fires that make the hardest steel. That hard work and conviction, and the know-how that runs generations deep in every last one of us. That's who we are. That's our story. Now, it's probably not the one you've been reading in papers, the one being written by folks who've never even been here and don't know what we're capable of. Because when it comes to luxury, it's as much about where it's from as who it's for. Now, we're from America, but this isn't New York City, or the Windy City, or Sin City, and we're certainly no one's Emerald City.
City. And this is what we do.
Okay, we can, some questions, comments?
Thank you. So we do have time for questions.
I just have a comment. I'm not sure what the research group in Wisconsin was looking at with that commercial, but immediately after that commercial aired on the Super Bowl, I got emails from all over the country complimenting it and admiring it and identifying with it. And actually from around the world, almost immediately, and still as I travel, people will come up and talk about that commercial. So I don't know if it was just the local Midwest or Detroit thing or not. It seemed to me that it reached all over the place.
Yeah, yeah.
And for good reasons, because it's very working class and very Detroit.
Yeah, and
the
reason I wanted to show this clip too is that I wanted to point out that rap culture is essentially its foundations are black culture. Eminem's rap is black culture, and he identifies with black culture. His whole style, his haircut, and I have to admit that I have to get this information from my children because this is not my genre. I'm a jazz person. But also the voice in the background of that commercial is a black man's voice. And at the end of this commercial, you have Eminem walking into, I think it's the Fox Theater, and you've got a black gospel choir that's singing there, and it brings chills. You know, and I think it speaks to the soul of the city. And it's a very, very strong, I think, supportive statement about black culture in a very sort of, both on a subliminal as well as on a visual level. And I think that's the reason that so many Detroiters like the commercial. Yes.
Okay, so then what was the purpose of the second video? What was the significance?
Black Milk and Losing Out, he's talking about his generation losing out and what's going on in the city. And it's filmed also, I wanted to use it because it's primarily being filmed in the train station. And he's talking about also that he's defending his culture, he's defending who he is, and he's saying that from destruction comes birth. I mean, there's some very, very strong lines in this piece. Sometimes difficult for some of us to discern.
Yeah, it was hard for me to follow the words, and I guess I was more caught up with the clothing. I mean, you know, my son dresses in that clothing, and I just don't, I don't know, maybe it's just me in the clothing, but it's just, there's a standard format of clothing that's worn, and so much is associated with that clothing that young black men literally cannot walk around the city with the hood on their head.
Well, it's their culture. I mean, when I was coming up, it was blue jeans. I used to have to listen to my elders telling me, why don't you put on a dress? Why do you keep wearing blue jeans, you know, or yelling at my brother about wearing a big afro. I mean, it's not what necessarily everyone might perceive of as being appropriate, but, you know, it is supposed to be a free country. And that's the way they express themselves, and I think it's part of the rebellion. It's a part of the way that they're making a statement about how they feel about the way that they're fitting into a society that has ostensibly discarded them. So in a way, it's sort of their way of, you know, saying, so what?
My main problem is with the pants.
Yeah, but I understand that people have a problem with it, but that's their culture, and if he was dressed any differently, the video generally is not geared to a middle class, you know, middle-aged audience. It's for his constituencies, you know, so, you know, but primarily what I was interested in was what he was saying, how he was talking about being discarded, losing out when all of this so-called regeneration and rebirth, and I think it's extremely important that we listen to what this generation has to say, because they are the ones in the worst situation, in the worst position. My children don't even live in Detroit because they couldn't find work in this city, and they're two young people with, you know, with college degrees, one in engineering. You know, almost sort of like, well, it's kind of like deja vu, isn't it? But you know, I think that we need to pay attention to that. What are we doing for young black people in this city? What are we doing here at Wayne State for young black people anymore? You know, how are they starting to disappear on this campus? You know, and begin to cater toward attracting, you know, a class of students who largely, you know, have choices, and they don't have very many choices. You know, these are the hard questions. You know, as Maine pointed out, you know, you can build up Midtown, you know, and you go across the street, you know, if you got just this much of a conscience, how do you feel about people who have been discarded? The same way that we want to just clear out a vacant lot and then we don't have to look at them anymore. You know, or just go down on the freeway and go home and don't have to come up until you can see your pristine suburbanite neighborhoods. You know, that's the way Americans generally deal with problems. Yes?
What's going on at 1515 Broadway tonight?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. There is going to be a fundraiser at 1515 Broadway at 8 o'clock for the Occupy Detroit movement. And I'll get a chance to read some more poetry. But I'm not the only one. There are a number of poets who are going to be there. Kim Hunter, and there are going to be musicians there, and a comedian, because we do need to laugh in the face of very difficult times.
So I think we have to conclude here, but we encourage you all to continue the discussion. We have a short break between sessions, and then the roundtable and reception tonight, so we hope that you'll all stick around until the end of the day so that what's been a more formal discussion can become an informal one that will hopefully continue past today's program. So thank you.